Oh, shit. My bad. We are here for UFC Apex 254. Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze 2. We are coming off a hot set of picks off last week for UFC 313, only getting the main event wrong. I know, my boy. It's terrible. But we are here this week. We're going to go ahead and continue that streak and get into some fights here with Marvin Vettori, the Italian Stallion, and Roman Dolidze. But let's start off first with our first fight. Yanesi Dubin versus Carly Giudice. I hope that's how you say her name. I apologize if I got that wrong. Man, this is a tough one. And you know, Carly, this is one of the few fights you've seen where Carly Giudice actually is on a 2-fight losing streak going into this. But both of her fights were so entertaining, so good, and she showed such insane durability. And she went against two strikers, and it was like a back and forth affair for both of them. So it's really tough to. It's understandable why they would have her as the favorite, but it's so crazy to think that's the case. But yeah, I actually am going to go with Carly Giudice. I mean, the dog factor, the fact that she also went against a couple of dogs. In Gabriela Hernandez and Ernesta Carrasquet, Ernesta is doing decent right now with not having too much experience fighting, starting in swimming and then going into fighting, 2 out of 3 in her UFC fights so far. So very interesting. Very interesting. Flyweight, man. Flyweight's pretty entertaining, I will say. So we're going with Carly Giudice for our first one. Next, we got Josiane Nunes versus Priscilla Cachoeira. We're going with Josiane Nunes. Now, this may be just because I saw Priscilla Cachoeira in her previous fight going against a grappler, but they both have a similar style of throwing the power. These two ladies are very entertaining. In terms of their game plans, they like to throw with power. They like to throw heavy. They like to move forward. The reason why I'm going to go with Josiane Nunes, she has a tendency more to keep her hands up. I do think she tends to move back a little bit more when she gets struck at, but I'm hoping she works on like circling out, especially with someone like Priscilla Cachoeira, who's going to, at least in her last fight, and this could be because she went against a grappler in the last fight, kept her hands a little bit lower and was throwing like a lot of big hooks, uppercuts, and things like that. But I think Josiane Nunes with her overhand rights is going to be able to catch Priscilla and even finish Priscilla, at this point, who is 36 in her career. Josiane Nunes kind of in her prime right now and has KO finishes in her, like only KO finishes, and like no submissions. Like in terms of finishing, she's going to KO 7 of them. That's a abnormal amount. So going with Josiane Nunes here. Pretty confident in that. And I think with her having the shorter stature but still decent reach, 2 inches of reach, it's like a Volk Max situation we got here, where the shorter fighter actually is going to have the advantage on landing the bigger shots. So going with Josiane Nunes here. Next we got a very touted prospect, André Lima, the guy who got bit by Igor Severino, fun fact, versus Daniel Barez. I'm going with André Lima here. Similar situation with Daniel Barez. A fighter moves forward, has decent boxing, decent grappling, but André Lima, I think his straight shots, he's much faster, I think more athletic. His grappling, I think, is very underrated, especially in his last fight. He looked really good against a flyweight I rate very highly, the flyweight out of Chuta Box, Felipe dos Santos. I mean, that's a good win, in my opinion, and André Lima showed his whole game. And another advantage you got to give André Lima, although he's the victim of the bite against Igor Severino, he is a cheater. And honestly, in this sport, you got to give advantages to cheaters nowadays. I'm sorry, I look like a vampire in here. Let me get some warm light. Ugh. But I'm going with André Lima here because he's got that advantage as well. I think he's just got everything on his side. Undefeated prospect. Someone who's actually going to keep an O for once. So we got André Lima. Next, we got Sam Hughes versus Stephanie Luciano. I'm actually going to go with Stephanie Luciano here for a few reasons. A little bit of height and reach advantage. That's what I like to see here. And actually a similar style to Sam Hughes. But I like Stephanie Luciano's footwork and defense counter shots way better. She looked on point in her previous fight. I think that was in the Contender Series, if I'm not Oh no, it was in the UFC. A draw. Oh yeah, she had this really good fight with this girl, and then they rematched. But yeah, her footwork was on point, on point. Um, really entertaining, actually. Female fighters, not the highest level, but pretty entertaining. We're at least gonna have decent women's MMA fights with the fact that we have a pretty low star power card. So yeah, Stephanie Luciano I think is just gonna beat Sam Hughes in a lot of areas. Maybe if Sam Hughes can push her game plan, maybe the cardio will be a problem, but who knows. Next we got Josias Musasa versus Carlos Vera. You gotta go with Josias Musasa. You gotta go with Josias Musasa. Carlos Vera, 37 years old, heavy grappler. Josias is not going to get taken down here. Worst case, he gets caught in a unorthodox submission because he gets too reckless and rushes a finish. But yeah, just Carlos Vera, skilled guy. Wish he could have gotten in the UFC a little bit younger. Maybe had a more developed skill set a little bit younger. Could have maybe been pretty decent at 135. But yeah, not in this day and age in MMA, I'd say. Next we got Seung Yu. Oh, by the way, let me mention, I've just skated all by this. The odds. I've only mentioned it on here. Minus 500, Josiane Nunes. Minus 2 to 1. 3 to 1. 2.5. 6. 7. This one's pretty even. I think it's even pretty much throughout besides this one, which is another 4.5. I think AJ Cunningham has this fight. And let me explain why. Seung Yu is pretty athletic. I think in the first 2 rounds. He's pretty athletic. When I've seen him in 5-round fights. AJ Cunningham made his debut at lightweight. Got absolutely dismantled by Ludovic Klein. It was tough to watch. He's taken a long time off. He's 30 years old. He's coming down to bantamweight with a 5'10", 71-inch reach advantage. That is going to be crazy. And AJ Cunningham has power. He does have power. And he is going against someone much smaller than him. If you watch AJ Cunningham fight, he is well-rounded. He is a decent striker. Seung Yu makes bad decisions. I've seen him in previous fights where he's jumping to full guard on a guy who supposedly has a grappling advantage against him and who welcomed it. And he didn't even try to pull a guillotine. He just jumped full guard when he was getting pushed against the fence. I didn't really understand the reasoning. I think these odds are ridiculous. I'm picking AJ Cunningham because I want to feel like a genius if I'm right. Because this is silly. This is absolutely silly in my opinion. AJ Cunningham has good enough skills to beat Seung Yu. Seung Yu may try to grapple heavy and actually, I think, get a decision even. That's the way I think he would win this fight. He's going to try and cage wrestle maybe or get tight inside. Who knows? Maybe he'll get tight inside and maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I just don't think that's how this happens. He's been shown to skate along the outside if he's pressured. If AJ Cunningham pushes forward and lands a lot of respectful shots early, you can make a lot of money on this, but you could also lose a lot of money on this. So be careful. Take your bets responsibly. Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Ryan Spann. I'm going to go with Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I know I told Ryan Spann, bro, you need to go up to heavyweight and beat some of these dudes. I meant some of the lower level guys. Not just outside the top 15 guys. Let's warm up with a Jake Collier first. Even that kind of scares me after watching some of the shots that Anthony Smith landed in the first round on Ryan Spann. What happens when that's Waldo Cortes-Acosta? What happens? I think bad things happen. And I think the biggest thing here is I think Waldo, he does do windmill punches, and that's not good. Because I think Ryan Spann can take advantage of those situations. But man, Ryan Spann is there to be hit, is he not? And he is going against a guy who has similar height and reach. Anthony Smith was landing those shots on him with 2 inches less of reach. That's all I'm going to say. And Waldo Cortes is going to have power and speed for a round. because Waldo Cortes, although he's got to lay a little layer on him, he's fast and he's athletic, and he could Rebellis to Spain Ryan Spann for all we know. He could use a mix of both. Not as heavy as he did against Rebellis to Spain. I think he tried to mix it more evenly to tire Ryan Spann and maybe even get a later knockout. But yeah, no, Ryan Spann, I don't think so. I think this is going to be bad. It's going to be rough. And Waldo Cortes-Acosta is going to go up in heavyweight and have a 13-1 record against a decent light heavyweight. So we got to be talking about Waldo Cortes-Acosta a little more seriously if he gets this win. Respectfully. Maybe like Mick Parkin, maybe him and Waldo will one day meet. You know, that would be a pretty fun fight. But yeah, Kevin Vallejos versus Seung Choi. Gotta go Kevin Vallejos. And we're at a point where we're understandable here. Kevin Vallejos looked fantastic in his Contender Series fight. Little fun fact. Went to decision with Gene Silva in the Contender Series. We don't like MMA math here, but getting to decision with Gene Silva is a accomplishment at this point. So it's a loss that's aged pretty well. And then went back to defending his title against 6-0 guys, 12-9, 14-2, 6-4. Like, this is respectable as hell. Kevin Vallejos came in with some momentum, and now he's got, after this Gene Silva loss, the kind of confidence that he probably has knowing he can hang with guys like that. Seung Choi is being thrown out to the wolves here, and I feel bad for him. Next, Nurgozhay versus Brinson Ribeiro. A pretty tough matchup to predict, honestly. Brinson Ribeiro, I think, one of the more underrated lower level light heavyweights. You know, he's faced some competition that is looking decent nowadays. This is tough. Two guys that he had previously fought, Bruno Lopez and who was the other guy? Bruno Lopez just lost to, or he won against Magomed Gadziasolov. Yeah, that's it. You know, beating guys who are going on to do pretty decent stuff. So, lost to Ming Yang Zhang. We've seen what he's doing. But this is where MMA math catches you. Because now he's losing to Magomed Gadziasolov. And then beating Cal. You know? So, be careful with your MMA math. Needless to say, Brinson Ribeiro, a lot of footwork, a lot of long shots. He does that weird thing that I don't like where he puts his jab out and his rear hand comes back, which, you know, gives me a lot of worries. I think it's going to be then we're going to see Brinson Ribeiro, kind of this 50-50 type of fighter who is going to be fun. He's going to have good fights, but I think he makes too many mistakes. And I think Dair Nurgozhay is very well rounded. He could take this, I think, really however he wants to. Obviously, Brinson Ribeiro is always going to have that 81 inches reach, but I think like Kevin Holland, he uses it kind of irresponsibly sometimes. That's what I think a big flaw of Brinson Ribeiro is. And guys who are built like him who kind of abuse this kind of reach sometimes, I think they just make silly mistakes. So I'm going to go with Dair. I hope I'm saying that right. Next, Blackshear versus Cody Gibson. Cody Gibson, you are not Davy Grant. Although I am impressed with the 2-fight win streak, they are against 38-year-olds. This is Blackshear, who is 30 years old, who has gotten impressive finishes, impressive wins. Had some losses here and there. But Cody Gibson, you are not Davy Grant. And I think Blackshear, with the experience that he has and the grappling he has, that Cody Gibson, I think, is just not going to be able to stop. I think Blackshear is he's going to take this to a decision. Maybe even a finish. Cody Gibson, I think, has good sub defense, and he'll I don't think he's been submitted a few times, but later on in the rounds. So I mean, it could happen, you know. It could absolutely happen. Cuz his submission losses, a lot of it coming in from the regional scene too. So that gives me pause. That gives me a lot of pause because Cody Gibson doesn't get knocked out, as you see. Does not get knocked out. Blackshear is the type of guy who is going to just annoy the hell out of Cody Gibson. So easy bet there. Next, we got Alexander Hernandez versus Kurt Holobaugh. I think a lot of people are going to get caught in the trap of betting Kurt Holobaugh here. But I think Alexander Hernandez, he's probably been the most humbled UFC fighter in terms of like the level of arrogance he was coming in with. One of the most humbled UFC fighters and 50-50 UFC fighters out there. He does not lose against Kurt Holobaugh in this point in his career. That is just how I feel. I don't think Kurt Holobaugh is going to guillotine Alexander Hernandez. I think Alexander Hernandez at this point is like, I will do any game plan necessary to make sure I am doing the correct thing to win a fight. This is one of the most humble men you will ever meet. All right? So, Alexander Hernandez. Next, we got Elijah Zaleski versus Chidi Njokuani. Fan favorite over here. We're going with Chidi Njokuani, bro. I love Chidi Njokuani. My man comes in for finishing. People were high. I see a lot of people passing around his highlights of his cage grappling where he's throwing a lot of good knees and just like staying active the whole time. Man, I wish I could remember the Dana White's Contender Series guy where Dana was watching his fight at first and there was like, this guy is like just cage wrestling and like just throwing knees and body shots and like some headshots in it here and there and elbows. And it was like really boring and slow at first, but he literally just didn't stop doing it, and they got like more violent. And then he literally was just finishing the guy with like just cage wrestling and elbows, knees along the fence, like just non-stop just the whole time. And that was the only thing he showed. But it was one of the most brutal, absolutely crazy finishes that we've seen. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Chidi Njokuani is going to win the fight exactly like that. I think he's going to really stifle Elijah. I hope that's how you say that. Fuck, I forgot. Oh my gosh. It's so hard to remember. But obviously, UFC vet over here. Lost to Randy Brown by decision. Then a round one finish to a guy I'm pretty sure was making his debut, if I'm not mistaken. Zach Scrogan. Yeah. And it was not even, that was a last minute replacement, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and he came in overweight. So the recent data makes it tough. A draw to Renat Furketnov is pretty impressive, but I think he just had a good style to go against him. I think this type of grappling that Chidi is going to bring is going to be a lot different than what Hanat brings. Hanat is just more so the wrestling and then getting you down, and that's where he starts to work. Whereas Chidi is going to do a lot more damage along the way. Speaking of grappling with damage along the way, Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze in the main event. I am actually, although Marvin Vettori is one of the most awkward people in the clips of him, are some of the most weird things I've ever seen, to put it kindly. I think he goes in similar to Alex Hernandez, another guy who has gone through the humbling session, and he goes in with a lot of confidence, especially with his last performance against Roman Dolidze, where we saw the unveiled new Marvin Vettori, a guy who's a Muay Thai kickboxer now, all right? A guy who throws body kicks, okay? A guy who throws leg kicks, a guy who can move along the outside if he wants to. I think now, hopefully, after the Jared Cannonier loss, and yeah, okay, this is what I was remembering. He had a grappling event as well, which gives me even more confidence because that shows like he is going to come in this as an MMA fighter. And Roman Dolidze, as we know, has fallen in love with his hands a little bit. Maybe a little bit too much. I think Marvin Vettori does almost the exact same thing he did last time, but even better. And even possibly could hurt Roman Dolidze. All right? Could hurt him. Because Jared Cannonier, that fight, he showed that he is actually the S tier chin in the UFC. That it was disgusting. All right? Didn't mean to scroll down that far. I meant to just go to the Jared Cannonier fight. So that was 2023. I like this break from Marvin Vettori. All right. I like this break for him. He needed it. And I think this man has stayed active in the gym. This man is a nonstop worker. I don't think there's such thing as really as a ring rust for Marvin Vettori. In terms of the mindset he's in now, I like where he's at. I like how I think he's gained a lot of confidence because of that Jared Cannonier fight. Okay? And the fact that he's a win over Roman Dolidze. I think Roman Dolidze is going to fall in love with his hands too much. He's not going to use the grappling that he really should be using in most of his fights. Because I think he choked out Kevin Holland. Rib injury from Kevin Holland. I think it was while they were grappling. So we'll see. Decision over Anthony Smith. What can we put stock into that? Like, can we even put stock into that? Because we don't even know what mindset, if Anthony Smith was actually Anthony Smith, like his best possible self in that fight. The Jack Hermanson win, that's what gives you pause. Because it's like, man, that win looked great. That win looked really good. All right. And the Phil Hawes submission into the KO was also really good. But then you see what happened in the Marvin Vettori fight and then the National Mamba fight. And then they give him the weirdest matchups after that. So I'm like, what am I evaluating here? So I'm just going to predict that Marvin Vettori does the same thing he does, but better. Because I don't trust the IQ of Roman Dolidze in a fight where he's going against the IQ master, Marvin Vettori. So that'll be it for me. Let me say the parlay for this one, because this was a tough card to break down. I was starting to glaze over. André Lima is a great one to put in because this is a decent price. The fact that he's not a higher price compared to some of the things we've seen on this card is insane. So André Lima, we're going to go. It's hard to really put anything on any of these women's fights. Yeah, that's tough. Because all these prices are insane. Fucking throw AJ Cunningham in the parlay. All right, so we got André Lima, we got AJ Cunningham, we got Kevin Vallejos. Then we have to be actually a big boy and put one of these harder ones in. And then Alexander Hernandez. This is a great price for this fight. Are you kidding me? Minus 190 for Alexander Hernandez at 32 years old against Kurt Holobaugh at 38. All right, so there's your parlay. Hernandez, Damon Blackshear, Kevin Vallejos. Because I think this isn't... Oh, well. Nah, I wouldn't bet on that one. Kevin Vallejos, and then André Lima. I think... Oh, and AJ Cunningham. All right, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do it. All right, just to show my dedication to you people. Okay. Let me know what you think. If I got it right, if I got it wrong, let me know who you guys are picking down in the comments below. Like the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here. And I'll be around for FFC. Or no, they canceled. So CFC. I'll be here for CFC on Friday. And maybe we'll do Cage Warriors on Saturday. Oh, but when does this card start? 4 p.m.? Ooh, nah, we're here. I'll be here for UFC as well. Thank you, everybody. I will talk to you next time.